and told them, would you rather be an 8, a 9, or 11 or 12 even, right? Because the way college basketball is now, there will be 12s that are favored over 5s.
Exactly.
So there's not much of a difference between a 12 and a 5, and then because in the second game, if you're a 12-5 and you beat the 5, you're going to play the 4 or the 13 in the second game. That's a lot different than playing the 1 seed in the second game.
Yeah, because I think a lot of it is just styles. It's not necessarily. Now, you may have, say like, number 1 Kentucky, UConn versus Stetson. More than likely, you figure UConn win that game. But then there are other, like, once you get past the 116s, but there can be upsets. But once you get past that 116, I think you try to set it up where styles are going to make the game. Maybe you're going against a up-tempo team and then another team loves to slow it down. You're going against a team. There's a team that's say like Kentucky, who averages 90 points a game or close to it, somewhere around there. They're the number one of the top teams in the country at scoring per game. Well, you match them up with a team that plays really good defense, say in the second round, or you say you believe their potential matchup in the second round could be a team that plays really good defense. So that styles make games. It's not necessarily we got two run and gun teams. You got a team that loves to run and gun in Kentucky, and say a team that loves to play defense. Say like Iowa. I mean, not Iowa, but Purdue. Say Purdue.
That Big Ten style.
They slow it
There's
down.
a certain style. Wisconsin, another one like that.
Slow
it's
it down.
Grind it on you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's, to me, that's what truly makes the March Madness like the best time in sports. I mean, it truly is. To me, it's over, the NFL playoffs, college football playoffs. To me, now other people may think differently, but it's just the fact that in a week span, you got teams that you may not have seen much. You get a chance to see them, and then they might upset a team that many pick probably more than likely to go to Sweet 16 or the Elite 8. It happens. That's why people love March Madness so much, because just because you're a 16th seeded team, say like St. Peter's, doesn't mean you can't win a game. Basketball is that type of sport. Like if the ball's going in the basket, I don't care how good the other team is, you may lose that game.
I have to say, there had to be some flashbacks when St. Peter's popped up there against Tennessee in the first.
Oh, man, yes.
Some Kentucky fans are going, St. Peter's. We know a little something about St. Peter's.
Exactly. Don't take them lightly.
So I don't think there'll be a sneak attack in that game. So Tennessee gets a 2 after all of that, after losing to Mississippi State. Mississippi State gets Derek Mace and Spartans in the first round. So we were actually on the air on Friday while both of those games were being played. Michigan State took Purdue right to the wire. It was a really good battle, and Tennessee laid the egg against Mississippi State to pretty much hand the 1 seed to North Carolina. So Tennessee is a 2. They're in the same bracket as Purdue. That's an interesting flashback because the last great Tennessee team that made a good run was the team that won the SEC tournament, and they lost to Purdue in the Sweet 16 in a game. I feel like it went to overtime. It was a great game. That was 2018 or 19? 2018, I think. Maybe 2017? But we were comparing that Tennessee team to this year's Tennessee team, right? So it's interesting we had that conversation.
It was before the pandemic, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so it might have been, 2018, somewhere around there. And they end up losing where the point guard just went completely off for Purdue, and they end up winning that game. Did it go over to overtime? Did it go over to overtime?
I'm going to look this up just to make sure I've got it. It was 2019, 99-94 in overtime was the final score. Oh, man,
and they could not stop that guard for nothing. He just had a field day.
So, yes, I know people in the recency bias is remembering last year's game between Purdue and Fairleigh Dickinson. Everybody's like, Purdue can't do anything in the tournament. Well, they did that night against Tennessee. They beat them. Purdue was 26-9 that year. They went 15 for 31 from 3 in that game. I'm looking at the box score now. Ryan Klein went 7 for 10 from 3. That had 27 points. Carson Edwards, 5 for 14 from 3, had 29. So that 1-2 punch. And that was obviously pre Zach Edey, who will be the key. Now, those two would have to get to the regional final, the final 8, before they would play one another. So there's a lot of games to be won. I think, Tennessee fans are going to say, hey, look, let's get to the Sweet 16 first here, based on their track record. Same thing with Purdue, right? They can't count their chickens.
No, because, if you're looking at their Purdue, they start off with either Grambling or Middle Tennessee State. I guess they're in the play-in.
No, it's not Middle Tennessee
not Middle Tennessee State. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Who is this?
Who is MTST? I forgot.
Just looking at it. Well, they're in the play-in. That's what it is. That team and Grambling are in the play-in. So it will be determined who they play in the next couple of nights in their first round, meaning Purdue. But looking at Purdue's bracket, Gonzaga, Kansas,
Montana State.
Montana State.
They got Gonzaga, you got Kansas, just in that whole Midwest. Then you got Tennessee. It seems like Tennessee, that South Carolina game, if indeed they do make it that far, that game's going to be tough, I believe, for them. But I'm not sure UT's bracket is all that hard if you look at it. I
think if you're Tennessee and if you're Purdue, I think you can't have any complaints.
No, you can't. Especially Tennessee.
I agree. Creighton is the 3. Creighton, you probably look at the name and say Creighton.
No, but they're a good team.
But they play in that Big East, and they're very, very good. So don't sleep on them. You've got Kansas as the 4. Kansas is not the Kansas that they are most years. They've been very banged up, very thin to start with. And Hunter Dickinson is hurt. I don't even know if Hunter Dickinson hasn't even had a great year. I feel like there might be a little senioritis with him. He's been around so long. So I think Kansas has got issues. I think Samford is going to give them a really good game just in the first round. So I think Purdue and Tennessee have good draws. I have not filled out my bracket. By the way, I'm a one bracket guy. I'm not this guy that enters 5 different things and puts 5 different draws in there and figures one of them will be good. I'm not that guy. I'm going to go one. If I'm going down, which I did last year, I finished last in my thing last year. Because remember, last year, none of the top seeds made it. I finished last. I'm not talking about, no, I didn't do very well. I'm talking, I finished last in my pool.
Wow, so what's your gauge this year?
And I think I was in 2 different pools. I think I finished last in both.
You have a good gauge on it this year for your bracket or no?
I try to see. This is probably part of my problem. I overthink it. I wait until Wednesday to pick.
Why are you waiting until Wednesday?
Maybe I should just fill it out tonight. And just
obviously
you have
the play-in
I look at
games.
matchups, and I'm like, what about the matchup here? What about this? Like you were saying, it's the styles,
yeah,
right?
Styles,
It's, like for example, Wisconsin. Wisconsin has got, they're a 5 seed. They're playing James Madison, 31-3.
That's a good team, by the way.
James Madison.
James Madison is a very sexy pick right there. But I've watched Wisconsin. They're hard nosed. They could win and then win another one. Because I'm not blown away by Duke this year, but I think it's harder to pick than it was even 5 years ago because of the older players that have stuck around. The COVID, so you have a lot of very experienced players, guys who are 20, we talked about it a lot, 22, 23, who are on their 5th full season of college basketball. Like Josiah Jordan James played 5 full seasons for Tennessee. 5. So when you have older players, some of the mid-major teams have older players, right? Those guys have transferred, sat out, they're older. So I think it levels off the playing field some. And there's not a big advantage. There hasn't been for a long time, but Now that advantage, I think, is even less for those Power 5, Power 6 conferences that play a tougher night-in, night-out schedule. That's my theory anyway. And that's why we saw San Diego State and Florida Atlantic get to the Final Four last year. And some of the teams are like, how did they make it? Like, if you look year in and year out now, there's almost always at least one that makes it to the Final Four. You're like, how did they make it? Well, that's what we are seeing now in college basketball.
Well, I mean, and this is why I love March Madness, because you never know what's going to happen. You go in thinking, you fill out your brackets, and I know everyone always fills out at least that one or two upset, like major upset. You have to pick it. You just don't know which one it's going to be. But this is why you love March Madness, because you just don't know what you're going to get. You don't know. I was watching this morning on ESPN, and they were talking about Kentucky and how, this is, the pressure is on Kentucky, especially after losing so early in the SEC tournament. The pressure's on them because, listen, Calipari has been doing this for a very long time, and he has a really good team. This team really started to come on the second half of the season. They're one of the top teams in scoring in college basketball. I don't think they rank top in defense. Their defense is horrible. But we can have teams like this, going up against, a lower seed, and then end up losing because if the ball's falling in the hoop, it's one and done. It's not a series. It's not about who's the better team. It's about who's the best team that night.
I agree.
Not necessarily who's the better team overall.
I think that's another thing that makes it even more unpredictable than it used to be, because with each passing year, there's more and more three-point shots being attempted. The line is further back, so I think it increases the chances of some variance, right? Let's take a look at Tennessee's performance against Mississippi State. What was the deal? They could not buy a three-point shot.
No,
got out-rebounded in the paint, by the way, too.
Right. Well, there was a lot of misses. There were a lot of rebounds to be had, right? If you're making it, there is no rebound, right? But they were way below par in that. That's the nightmare, and that is going to happen to somebody. So maybe if you're Tennessee, the way you look at it is, okay, we got our one bad game out of there, the nightmare, and maybe that's out of our system, and we won't have that type of game in the tournament. Because we see teams go on a roll where you can win, you can go for two straight weeks and just be on a roll and be hitting double-digit threes in each game, and that carries you through. But you have that one bad game where you're not hitting threes and the other team is, you're out.
Yeah.
And I don't care how great you've been during the regular season. That's the thing that look, let's look at it from Tennessee's perspective. What's everybody going to say if they don't go to at least the Final Eight? Rick Barnes can't get it done. They can't get it done. Well, but if they have a game like that, I don't know that it's Rick Barnes, right? Some days the shots don't go in, and you face a team that is on fire. So there's just a lot of that can happen. Purdue is in that same label right now of can't get it done in the tournament. They couldn't. Last year, Fairleigh Dickinson was sitting back there going, take the three. Take it. I want to leave you wide open. We don't want Zach Edey to shoot. And they choked. They just choked. They didn't hit threes. They missed them. They have great shooters. Purdue has great shooters around Zach Edey. Last year in the first round, you wouldn't have known that. They couldn't hit it.
They got good shooters around them this year.
Yes.
If you watch that Big Ten, game, them in Wisconsin, I mean, they were, even though the game was close for most of the game, you just saw they couldn't stop that inside-outside game with Zach Edey and those guards. They wanted to try to, play it man-to-man with Zach Edey, and then they tried to double him. And anytime they did that, he just kicks it back out to the wing or kicks it back out to the top of the key for a three-pointer. It is hard to stop. And then he's really if he really wanted, he's unstoppable. He is, because he's bigger than everybody. Not just taller. He's just a big person. Has a nice shot. So it's hard to, stop him when he's really on his game. Now, he's not the fleet of foot, but
right.
he
You've
does
got to try to exploit him on the other end. You got to try to bring him away from the back.
You have to play small ball,
and that's
Purdue.
what Fairleigh Dickinson did that well last year.
Exactly.
They had quick forwards. They were small guys. They couldn't match up with them on one end of the court. They were, just doing what they could, fouling them, pushing them out. But they got back doors. They moved out. They tried to move them around.
Yeah.
I think that's what a team has to do against Purdue.
Yeah, you have to, and that's the only way. And I was wondering why Wisconsin didn't do it. But, I mean, they play Purdue twice. They play Purdue twice a year, and possibly, obviously, in the Big Ten tournament, it would be the third time. But you just try to figure out a way to minimize, how he impacts the game. But Wisconsin couldn't stop him. So any other team that's going to play them, whether it's Montana State or Grambling, it's going to be a hard task for them to stop, Zach Edey and that bunch. So, and then obviously, Tennessee and what they're capable of doing. And to me, it becomes even more pressure for Rick Barnes because you didn't win a game in the SEC tournament. It wasn't like you had to win the tournament. Winning the tournament would have been nice, but you didn't win a game in the tournament. You got embarrassed in the tournament. And now all of a sudden are we to believe you can turn a light on and make a run to the national championship the way you played? And if Connect's not shooting the ball well, I don't know if this team is going to get far. I really don't. Even though they have other good players, I think he generates he's sort of if you look at it, when he's scoring, it seems like everybody else flows better. When he's struggling, it seems like everybody else sort of struggles until they find their shot. And sometimes it may be a little bit too late to find that shot.
All right, last question before we go to the break, and then we'll talk some Preds. We'll come back to the brackets each hour here. Obviously, everybody's excited about this. Who would you rather be? Let's take Tennessee out of it. Kentucky, who's matched up as the 3 seed against Oakland in Marquette's side of the bracket. Of course, Houston is the 1 seed in that. Auburn, who just won the SEC tournament, played great in Nashville. They're a 4 seed against Yale. In fact, this is, again, why I'm not really sure why they don't value a great performance in the conference tournament a little bit more. To me, Auburn should be higher than a 4 seed. They're number 4 in the KenPom. How are they? They won the SEC tournament. How are they a 4 seed? I don't get that. But look, that's where they are, and they're in UConn's bracket, which UConn, of course, has got to be looking at and saying, "Oh my gosh, Auburn's the team that we could play in the Sweet 16." That's not an easy Sweet 16 for the number 1 overall seed. My goodness, that would be something. Oh, and then Alabama is also the 4. So who would you rather be among those 3 teams? I think Auburn's got the toughest draw. I think Kentucky's got a good draw, but and then there's Alabama. Who do you like?
Oh, man, I'm looking at Alabama's bracket.
Alabama's in North Carolina's bracket,
Carolina,
which is
Mississippi
State, the weakest
State.
1 seed on paper.
Yeah. And then you said Auburn.
Yeah.
Now, are you saying
who's got the best chance to make a deep run?
Oh, to make a deep run, not a national championship. Does the deep run mean the
Final
national?
Four?
Okay,
let's say Final Four.
Auburn. Who
in
else
theory,
did you say?
Alabama, and
Auburn, and Kentucky. I'm looking at Kentucky's now. I'm not sure if it's not Kentucky.
I love Kentucky's draw. I have to tell you.
Now, I think it may be Kentucky.
That's the team that.
But they play no defense.
That's what everybody's going to say. I think they will play good defense in this tournament.
Based on?
I just think they'll more. They've got to do it. They have to be at their best.
They're capable of scoring 120 points.
I like their draw,
but they're also capable of giving up 121 points.
I'm going with Alabama.
I'm going with Kentucky.
Yeah,
I'm going with Kentucky. I just think Kentucky has at least to get to the Sweet 16. At least to get to the Sweet 16, I would say.
Okay. Well, let's table that. We'll continue to debate that. If you've got thoughts, send them into our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Also, send us your Predators questions because we've got Adam Vingan coming up in the next segment to talk Preds. So hang with us. We're just getting started on this fun day on the show. Caroline, Willy, and D-Mase here on 102.5 The Game. All right, let's talk Loan Pronto. They're helping people all the time get into a better financial position by using your home's equity. It's a basic strategy that they have down to a T. They're really good at having you go through the process seamless. You don't have to go here, go there, submit paperwork here, submit paperwork there. It's all done digitally now. It's so much easier to get approved. You don't have to get an appraisal a lot of times. So there is a lot that you have going for you, especially if you're a homeowner that has a home value that's way up. And if you're listening in our area, likely you've got some good home equity that you can work with. So if you've got high interest loans out there, credit cards, car payments, maybe a big tuition payment that you've got to get done, all of these things happen in life, and your home's equity is a great way to get the cash you need to do that, or start a home improvement project. Just call Loan Pronto now, 615-499-5780. That's 615-499-5780, or go to loanpronto.com and find out more. Loanpronto.com, 615-499-5780. NMLS 166-1781, subject to lender approval, equal housing lender. All right. So much going on. March Madness. Back here on Caroline, Willy, and D-Mase, and we are broadcasting live, of course, from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round. And we're brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. And, of course, you must be 21 and up in Tennessee to bet. Now, let's bring in Adam Vingan. The Predators are now 12-0-2 in their last 14 games. And if you're like, okay, that's great, you've been watching them so far, they're not just winning. They've been winning decisively. They have outscored their opponents during this stretch 57-27. It is really remarkable what they have done here in the last few weeks to get themselves into a solid position right now. 82 points. They have not clinched a playoff spot yet, but and to their credit, St. Louis and Minnesota, they keep winning. St. Louis has won 4 in a row. There is back pressure still. There's work to be done to get into the playoffs, but Nashville has put themselves in the driver's seat. And so we bring in Adam Vingan for his insights. Adam, welcome to the show.
Hey, guys. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. So, Adam, since we last talked, right, I don't know that the Predators have lost, right? I think they were just starting this streak when we last spoke to you. It was around the time of the trading deadline. We were still wondering what was the right move. We were talking about ads and even players that they would subtract. So first, now that you see the finished product, they have traded Yakov Trenin, they have brought in Jason Zucker and Anthony Beauvillier, and they didn't pay a big price for either guy. What do you think the net result is?
Yeah, that's a good question. And by the way, I think the last time we spoke was the day that Tommy Novak signed his contract.
Oh, that's right.
I can't remember.
Yes, that's correct.
And I wasn't far off, I don't think.
I think you were right there.
I think I said $3 million per season. So not terribly off. I'll pat myself on the back for that one.
And you should also get patted on the back for your prices for the rentals, right? You threw out almost the exact price that Florida paid for a Vladimir Tarasenko. We were kicking around the different names, and it all opened up in the next couple of days after that.
Well, I appreciate you stroking my ego. When I look at what the Predators have been able to do, and I went and pulled some numbers just looking at the span of time of this point streak, which started February 17th on the road against St. Louis. So I looked at their traditional numbers and some of their underlying numbers, which are typically predictive of success. So as you said, Willie, the Predators have been dominant in terms of goal differential. They're averaging more than 4 goals per game during this point streak, which since February 17th is the highest total in the league, 4.07 to be exact. So first in the league in goals per game. They're also tied for first in the league in goals against per game during the point streak. They have allowed 1.93 goals against, which is tied for first with the Carolina Hurricanes, who by many accounts are a legitimate Stanley Cup contender. And then I looked under the hood a little bit, and the one thing I looked at, among other things, is the expected numbers, which we've talked a lot about. And Willie, I know you pay very close attention to these things. The expected goals for and against are often reliable barometers for how a team is playing. For the Predators, an expected goals for per game during this point streak are 7th in the NHL. And on the other side of the ice, expected goals against, they're first. So they are playing dominant in their own end. They're first in expected goals against and first in actual goals against. So that speaks to the goaltending they've been receiving. But it's not a case of, as we saw last year, for example. Think about how this team played down the stretch last year after the trade deadline. They were winning a lot of games. That was mostly, if not all, on the back of UC Saros. He had saved a ridiculous amount of goals above expected, and their actual defensive numbers were pretty poor. You could chalk that up completely up to goaltending, that UC Saros was trying to will the Predators into the postseason almost single-handedly. That has not been the case during this point streak. Not only have he and Kevin Lankinen been great, but the team in front of them has played outstanding defense. So when you look at this point streak as a whole, there's nothing fluky about this. The numbers over the past 14 games show that this team is playing incredibly well, and the fact that they've been able to sustain it for the past month is very encouraging.
So I think that's an interesting point that I'm not sure the rest of the league has really caught on to unless you're somebody who really pays attention to these numbers, because I think it's easy to say, oh, Nashville, they're on a roll right now. But as you've said, that it's not just a hot goalie or they're getting all of the bounces. They've been deserving of having success here because of the formula. And I have to go back. It's still, because you look at the names on the paper, Adam, it doesn't jump out at you, as everybody knows, as an all-star studded lineup. You know, their stars are playing well, but on paper, this shouldn't be a team like that. So I go back to the effect of Andrew Burnett. What are your thoughts on that? He's got to be starting to get some consideration for the Jack Adams, doesn't he?
Yeah, probably. And, you know, I think of the other candidates that come off the top of my head. Oftentimes you can look at a team that's playing well and point to their coach getting Jack Adams consideration. Oftentimes, though, I feel like the formula for the Jack Adams, and correct me if I'm wrong, Willie, you vote on the Jack Adams, correct?
Correct. The broadcasters have the vote for the Jack Adams.
Right.
And I will tell you, it's hard because every year there's at least 6 or 7 that you can make a case for.
Right. And oftentimes I feel like the formula is coach of a team that nobody expected to be good at the start of the season.
Yes, that's one for sure category. No question.
So Andrew Burnett would certainly fall into that category. I think of the job that John Tortorella has done in Philadelphia to get that team into a playoff spot, an unexpected playoff spot. I'm sure he'll get a lot of love. And then, of course, the teams that are near the top of the league, like Rick Tocchet, Peter Laviolette, Jim Montgomery. Those coaches, I'm sure, will get a lot of consideration for the Coach of the Year award. But when I think about Andrew Burnett, and this was my conversation. I had this conversation a lot with Jared during the off season after the change in coaching was made. Andrew Burnett had a great record as coach of the Florida Panthers after he replaced Joel Quenneville. But that team was a wagon, to use the hockey term. I believe they were 7-0 at the time that the coaching change was made, and they ended up winning the President's Trophy that season. Now, that isn't to say that Burnett didn't have a role in helping the Panthers get there, but that team was so immensely talented that I think a lot of coaches could have had similar success. So I wouldn't say I was skeptical of Andrew Burnett, but when I looked at his record with the Panthers, I thought to myself, he had an incredibly talented team. And
right. I think that was the consensus at the time, and that's probably why they didn't keep him as the coach, which I think as they look back on it, hey, Paul Maurice hasn't done half bad. They're still good, but I think that's a fair point.
Right. But now you're seeing what he has done with this team. And as you said, Willie, when you look at the roster on paper, there aren't a lot of players that pop off the page. There's Roman Josi, there's Philip Forsberg. If you can include Ryan O'Reilly in there if you would like. UC Saros, of course, has been an outstanding goaltender for the past few years, but they don't necessarily have that one guy that stands above everybody else. Just looking at the other teams in the Western Conference, there's no Connor McDavid, there's no Leon Draisaitl, there's no Jason Robertson, there's no Elias Pettersson. Or, you can keep going down the list. There's not that one guy that necessarily grabs your attention when you're looking at the roster. And when you consider what this team was expected to do, how this team had been playing for the first half or so of the season, and what they've been able to do now, where they're basically guaranteed a playoff spot. As long as they don't completely collapse and do the opposite of what they're doing right now, as long as they don't go 12-2, let's call it, they're probably safe to make the playoffs, which I did not expect to be the case when the season started. I absolutely believe that Andrew Burnett deserves consideration for the Jack Adams Award. But to your point, Willie, sometimes with the Predators, I know this well, you know this well, they don't always get the national attention, even when they're playing well.
Right.
So it may be harder to make that case for Brunette in terms of his qualifications versus some of the other coaches.
We're talking with Adam Vingan, discussing the Nashville Predators, who are on a heater as we speak. Now, we assume with the way they're playing, Adam, that this team will make the playoffs. More than likely, they'll be the first wild card. Which team would be a better matchup for them if they are going to advance in the playoffs?
That's a good question, because the fact that the team they're playing, at this point is going to be a division winner, most likely. Well, of course they're going to be division winners. But, it could be Vancouver. It could be Dallas, Winnipeg, Colorado. The Central is very much up for grabs. Vancouver has a bit of a cushion in the Pacific Division, but they haven't been playing well lately, and Edmonton is sort of making things interesting in second place. So when Willy and I were talking about this yesterday over text, I was thinking to myself, okay, which team could present the most advantageous matchup for the Predators? And one thing I wanted to look at is how a team has been playing recently. Mm-hmm. And over the same stretch of time that the Predators are 12-0-2, the Canucks are 5-6-2, and their numbers are not good. They're 26th in the league in scoring over that span. They're 20th in goals against. They're 26th in expected goals scored per game. Their starting goaltender, Thatcher Demko, is injured. Things have kind of gone sideways a bit in Vancouver. And depending on whether or not they're able to figure that out over the next month or so, I wonder if a hot team like the Predators playing a slumping team like the Canucks, could be advantageous to them, the Predators, that is. Now, there are other factors you have to include that aren't showing up in the numbers, like schlepping all the way to Vancouver. That's not an easy flight. I recall vividly how tired I was in 2016 flying between Nashville, Anaheim, Nashville, and San Jose, back and forth. And I can only imagine what it's like. Yeah, a lot of miles. And I can remember, and I can only imagine what it's like.
A lot of Netflix shows in the
yes,
or a lot of books you could read. However you like to spend your time on a flight, you've got plenty of time.
Yeah, exactly. So that plays a role in it too. So I wonder if Vancouver can't get out of this slump, I wonder if they're ripe for the picking. And as Willy, you said to me yesterday, there's going to be a tremendous amount of pressure on the Canucks in their market, which can have a detrimental effect. The other team I think about is Dallas, because they're a high scoring team, as Predators fans know. The last time they lost a game in regulation, we all saw what the Stars were capable of. But one thing about the Stars that really stands out to me is that their goaltending has not been good this year. Jake Oettinger has not been good. The team, their goaltending has not been good. They've outscored that issue for most of the season. But if the Predators can lock things down defensively like they have been over the past month, and they're able to get to Jake Oettinger, I wonder if we could see a bit of a reverse of what we saw in 2019 when the Stars upset the Predators. I wonder if you could see a reverse of that.
Oh, man, Predator fans would enjoy that. That's for sure, if that could happen.
I think about Dallas. Like I think Vancouver, if they're not able to get out of the slump, I wonder if that could be a good matchup. But I think about Dallas just because they have unreliable goaltending this year. If the Predators play as well defensively as they have over the past month, they can mitigate that. And if they can get to Jake Oettinger in net, I think the Stars could be ripe for an upset.
Adam, do you have time to hang with us for one more segment?
I do.
Okay, hang with us. We got a few more questions for you. And if you have questions for Adam, if you have Predators questions for us, text them right now or call in 615-737-1025. Our phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Stay tuned. More with Adam Vingan. We're talking Predators, and we'll have more on the other side. Hang with us. All right, let's tell you about Lee Company. By the way, Lee Company is a great sponsor of our Nashville Predators coverage. We're talking Predators right now on our show, and for that matter, Predators have called up defenseman Mark Del Gaizo from Milwaukee, so keep your eye on that. Now, let's tell you about Lee Company and what they're doing. This is the time of the year to get the air conditioning unit checked. If you haven't had it checked since last year, this is what you need to do. Just do that in general. But then when you get the service from Lee Company, look at the long-term relationship. That is the home maintenance plan. It's outstanding. For more information on this, call 615-567-1000. A great starting point is, have you had your air conditioning unit checked in a good while? Because, look, we know it gets hot here in the summer. There's going to be a lot of sweating. You're going to do your share no matter what, but you don't want to do it in the middle of the night when it's really hot overnight and you can't even put the bed sheets on without sweating up a storm. You don't want to be that person. Get the air conditioning unit checked from Lee Company. They will take care of you and make sure that doesn't happen. So you're cool all summer long. Lee Company, 615-567-1000, or go to leecompany.com. Lee Company, let their decades of expertise go to work for you. Yes, there's been some good old hockey games here recently. Also, we've got the brackets going on here. It is March Madness. We're talking Predators right now with Adam Vingan. But also, remember to sign up and play the 102.5 The Game Bracket Challenge. Once again, I finished last year in this challenge, but it's your chance to win great prizes, including 4-day passes to Bonnaroo. Hello, all you music fans. The teams have been selected, so go to thegamenashville.com. That's thegamenashville.com/bracket challenge. You'll see it on our website, and you'll fill out your bracket and compete. The 102.5 The Game Bracket Challenge is brought to you by ESPN Bet Sportsbook, Twin Peaks, and Volunteer Hose and Gasket. Adam Vingan is with us. Adam, D-Mase has a good question for you about the newcomers here.
Yeah, because it seems like, Adam, they've been getting a lot of good play out of the third and fourth line, and they're going to need it because that, the first line is taking up, carrying their weight, and they're doing a good job at it. But that second line, And I know they've added 2 new players, Bavilier and Zucker, to the second line, but it seems like they're not getting much out of them in regards to goal scoring. How can they get more out of them? Is it just implementing 2 new guys and they're still learning the system and still learning how to play with one another?
Yeah, that's also a good question. And to your point, Derek, when you look at the underlying numbers, again, of that line specifically with Anthony Beauvillier, Colton Sissons, and Jason Zucker, it hasn't been great. They have controlled 41.2% of expected goals at even strength. That's not good. You want to be over 50%. So in terms of the quality of offense, when that line is on the ice, the majority of it is going toward the other team. So that line has not stood out positively, at least according to the numbers. But the other lines that they've been relying on during this point streak have been very good. We know about Forsberg, O'Reilly, and Nyquist. The fourth line of McCarron, Sherwood, and Smith has been strong as well. But I think the line that's really stood out to me is that line with Novak, Jankowski, and Evangelista. They've been very dangerous offensively, generating high-quality chances for the Predators. So, 3 of the 4 lines right now are clicking. To your point, Derek, the one that isn't is the one that includes 2 new players. So, perhaps you can chalk that up to needing to develop that chemistry, because those other lines, the 3 other lines, have been together for a while now. They know their tendencies. They know how each other like to play and how they play off of each other. So your hope is that as that line, that Sissons, Zucker, Beauvillier line, continues to learn each other, that they can catch up with the rest. But so far, the numbers suggest that it hasn't been going well.
So, Adam, looking ahead here, another thing that I think has to be noted, and you've started to see it here in the last couple of games, you still have to knock on wood or keep your fingers crossed, grab your lucky rabbit's foot, whatever you got.
4-leaf clover.
And you've got to hope that this is just a year where you get some good fortune with staying healthy, because to this point, I don't think you can complain about how it's fallen. Now, last year, maybe this is a little correcting, because last year they played the last month and a half without Roman Josi. They played the last half of the season against Philadelphia, the concussion, and that was it for him. So they had a ton of injuries last year. They've started to have a couple of D-men, Spencer Stastny, Dante Fabro go down. So that is something, right, that can mess with your overall statistical footprint. So you have to hope for the best, and you got to hope that your depth can do the job.
Yeah, the most important thing is when you sort the Predators' games played individually, there are 6 players who have appeared in every game this season, and 4 of them are Philip Forsberg, Ryan O'Reilly, Gustav Nyquist, and Roman Josi. Like that's very important. That none of their star defensemen and their top line, none of those players, again, knock on wood if you'd like, have missed a game yet for this team. That's huge. The other 2 players who haven't missed a game, Colton Sissons and Jeremy Lauzon. But yes, you're right. The fact that they haven't had significant injury in terms of missing a key player for a long period of time. As you said, Willie, last year they missed Philip Forsberg for a long time. They missed Roman Josi for a long time. They missed Matt Duchene for a long time. They missed Ryan Johansson for a long time. Injuries definitely caught up to them. Perhaps it's the hockey gods smiling down upon them with favor this year after not doing so much last year. But yes, that is the one thing that can change everything about how a team is playing. But so far, so good for the Predators. They haven't had to deal with too many significant injuries, and their star players have been in every game.
All right, so if I put you on the spot, and let's say for now, because there's still an outside shot. We know how Edmonton can just go for weeks without losing, right? They've done it. They can be very streaky. But let's take them out of the mix, and let's stick with the 4 that we talked about. Vancouver if they hold on to the Pacific, and Nashville would be if they're the 2 wild card, that's who they could play. And then any of the 3 that are tied at the top of the Central right now, Dallas, Winnipeg, and Colorado. In your mind, what is the best matchup for Nashville if they make it?
It's tough. I mean,
it's a very tough one. We spent a long time debating this away from the rink, Adam, just so you know. I mean, I don't know that there's an easy answer.
No, there isn't, because each of those teams has a significant strength. Like, look at Winnipeg, for example. Winnipeg is a great defensive team, and they've got the best goalie in the league, in my opinion, over the course of the full season, in Connor Hellebuck. And we know that can change the series for sure. And something tells me that you do not want to face Nathan MacKinnon in the playoffs. I mean, the Predators have done it a couple times. I don't advise doing that. Nathan MacKinnon, having to deal with Nathan MacKinnon for up to 7 games, that seems a bit dangerous. That's why I continue to settle on Dallas. I think that Dallas, as I said, great offensive team, deep team. They added Chris Tanev at the deadline. Was it Logan Stankoven, young player, has come in and been incredibly productive for them. And the Predators fans know about Hintz and Pavelski and Robertson. Duchesne's been good for them, all of that. But I do believe that goaltending is an issue for them. And as I said earlier, if the Predators can play as well defensively as they have been over the past month and neutralize Dallas's offense, I think that Jake Ottinger is vulnerable. And I just when I put all of that together, it's not going to be easy. But I think the most advantageous matchup, in my opinion, right now is Dallas.
Okay, so we're going to hold you to that. We'll see. Nashville is 2-2 against Dallas, and of course they had the one that they had won with 15 seconds left, and Dallas scored 2 goals somehow in the last 15 seconds, which I don't think I've seen. And then, of course, there was the 9-2 craziness. Nashville won twice in Dallas. Nashville's 2-1 against Winnipeg. They're 2-0 so far against Colorado. They've got to go to Colorado later. They've both of the wins are at home. And Vancouver, who I kind of tend to agree, looks like the weakest team on paper to me, but Vancouver has beaten Nashville 3 times and beaten them all kind of decisively. But that was really before Nashville got in that groove that we've been talking about. Although all 3 of those matchups were relatively early in the season. Adam, really good stuff as always. We'll check in again here very soon, and we'll see how this continues to shake out.
Before I go, I have one piece of advice for people filling out their brackets for your bracket challenge.
Take Duke all the way, right?
No, that's a superstitious thing that I don't like to do. I just have to leave you with one thing: A, B, C. Anybody but Carolina.
Okay.
That's my advice.
So there you go. Sparties, D-Mase, take them out in the second round. That's all you got to do.
Hey,
take the Sparties.
You need Derek, place a phone call to your friend Tom Izzo and tell him to do me a huge favor, okay? I need that.
Hey, we got you. Don't worry about it. March is not March anymore. It's Izzo. It's the month of Izzo
time.
Yeah,
it's the month of Izzo.
Yeah, the month of Izzo.
All right. Adam, we'll talk soon.
Thanks, guys.
Good stuff. Adam Vingan, talking Predators. All right, when we come back, Chase McCabe is going to sit in and chat with D-Mase. I'm going to step out just for a little bit. I'll be back here very shortly. Stay tuned. We've got a lot more coming here on the show. And don't forget, the game phone text line, as always, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. And we're broadcasting from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round.
Hour number 2, Caroline, Willy, and D-Mase. Chase McCabe stepping in while Willy steps out, and Caroline on vacation alongside forever wide receiver Derek Mason. Dr. Crane, Nick Frazier on the ones and twos. Hope you're having a great start to your Monday. We're going to hit a lot of Titans topics here in this hour because I don't get to sit with you much anymore, D-Mase, and so I'm excited to talk a little receiver and all those things. But real quick, Cam had a question on the Predators that he wanted to get in. Cam, what's up?
Yeah, just, they keep talking about, or, you hear it on the radio, the air quotes, if you will, of heater, the Predator on a heater. When does it actually, because this team doesn't look like the team that started the season. So when do they drop the label of being on a heater and actually just a better team? They're playing a better team. That's one part. And the second part, what do we owe that to? Do we owe it to Barry Trotz, Andrew Burnett, or the fact that they grounded the team and they couldn't come out and play for the YouTube concert? What do you guys think about that?
I think the answer to that, Cam, is yes.
All of
the above.
All of it.
Appreciate the
Barry, Coach Bruno.
Oh, yeah.
The not going to the YouTube concert. I think all of it you can kind of say is a contributing factor to what they've been able to do over the last, 15 games?
14
games?
game point streak now. Look, my thing is there's not many people in the National Hockey League that could have gotten away with canceling a concert like that with professional players that, make more than you do. And it's like there's not many people that have that kind of pull to be able to do that. Barry Trotz does. Yeah. And so that was a Barry move, and Bruno obviously was a part of it too, but there's not too many people that can do that and then all of a sudden the guys are, and I'm sure they were mad, but they used that to their advantage.
Yeah, but I don't think it was, the more I think about it, I don't look at it as this punishment or anything. I just look at it from the standpoint of his team played bad the night before, and he wanted to keep his team focused. And he didn't want anything to take away from that focus, anything. He wanted everything to be about hockey. That's why the trip was canceled. I don't think it was so much he looked at that game and said, you know what, damn it, we're not going to that YouTube because of the way. Yeah. He probably just looked at it as like, no, we need to just be focused on hockey. We can get to that other stuff later.
Right.
But we need to be focused on hockey.
Yeah, 100%. So appreciate the call, Cam. All right, shifting into the Titans and the moves they've made and the moves they haven't made. And I've been fascinated by – listening to you all talk about Calvin Ridley, listening to his press conference on Friday, and I walked away, and you've always taught me this, of a guy either has dog in him or he doesn't. Like, you can't really teach it. You don't just all of a sudden find it one day. You either got it or you don't. I listened to that young man talk, and I go, that dude's got – not only does he have dog in him, he's got a lot of dog in him. He has a chip on his shoulder. I had no problem with anything he said, getting up there and – the money, and I watched the interview he did with Mike Keith where he got emotional about it and talking about his mom and stuff like that. That is a guy that I think has had to grow up a lot, his own doing.
Exactly.
But has had to grow up a lot. And now he's ready to go prove it and show that he belongs in this league and can be a true number one receiver in this league. And I'm really, really excited to see him paired with DeAndre Hopkins and hopefully Traylon Burks.
Here's my definition of DAWG. My definition of that is, what is your why?
Right.
What is your why? Because if you don't know what your why is, you're not going to go out.
Mine's in Bellevue.
Yeah, yours in Bellevue. And you're not going to go out and give it 100%.
Right.
You're not going to go out and never back down if you don't understand and know what that why is. Well, if you listen to Ridley talk, you know what his why is. He talked about his mom. He talked about, them not respecting him and the stuff that he's been through. That's his why. So he's going to go out there and remember that why each and every time. Now, me, my why wasn't the money. The money was great. I'm not going to get that twisted. The money was great, but that wasn't my why. That was never my why. My why was they didn't draft me into the 4th round. My why was it seemed like every time I was the one that was on the back burner, and I had to work even harder than everybody else to even get my name mentioned in a starting lineup. My why was my family, my children. That was my why. My why was they don't expect me to do what I'm doing. So I'm going to go out there each and every day and try to dominate you. I am not going to ever back down from you. You beat me, I'm getting up and I'm fighting again. That's what I was taught growing up with my brothers. If you get in a fight, they beat you, get back up, you fighting again.
Right.
And even if they don't want to fight, you're going to fight again until you win. That's just the way it was. And it worked for me. You understand and see what his why is. That's why I say he's the dog. You look at D-Hop, you know what his why is. Now we're trying to find that Burks, what is your why? Why do you play this game? Not because I don't want to hear from anybody. It's I want to know what the league can do for me. No, that's not your why. That's not a why. Why are you playing this game? Why are you happy to be in this league? Is it just to make a lot of money and for the fanfare? No, that can't be your why. Because that money could be gone just as quick as you got it. Those fans are going to be gone once you retire. So what is your why? So when you listen to Calvin Ridley, you understand what his why is. You understand why he's angry in a good way, but he's angry and he want to go out there. If he could start today playing games, I think he would play games today.
Oh, 100%.
Because I think he's that eager to get on the field and prove to everybody that he's still that receiver that we saw in Atlanta. That's the receiver he is when each and every year he was getting better.
Here's what's interesting, too. So you got the 3 receivers that we're talking about that are on the Titans roster. They're all former first-round picks, right? And there's a different set of difficulty that comes with being a first-round pick. Like the biggest one is you have to live up to being a first-round pick. I think DeAndre Hopkins has. Calvin Ridley to this point probably hasn't. Treylon Burks definitely hasn't at this point. You know, for you, like you just laid out, you're a 4th-round pick. And so you have the stigma of like, if he makes it, great. If he doesn't, it doesn't matter. Whatever. He's a 4th-round pick. And you turn it into what should be a Hall of Fame career. These guys have to find that their why, that motivation in a different way. To me, when I watched DeAndre Hopkins last year, that dude played like he was a 6th-round pick, like proving that he belonged in this league. Like he almost overachieved because everybody said, nah, he doesn't have it like he used to. He's too old now. You know, he's washed up, and he looked pretty darn good on a bad team.
Yeah.
You know, had over 1,000 yards. Now, Ridley had over 1,000 yards too. So now you got 2 1,000-yard receivers starting for your team. And you and I were talking about this during the break of, okay, well, do they start phasing out D-Hop? Is Ridley getting more targets than D-Hop did? To me, I think you figure out a way to incorporate both of them because they're just going to push each other because of everything that we're talking about. The dog that they both got in them, that it becomes a friendly competition. Why can't this team, with the offense the way that it wants to go, have 2 guys that are knocking on 1,000-yard receiving seasons? Now, granted, I understand. You got to work Burks in. Burks has to earn his opportunities. You're going to have a Okonkwo. You're going to have 2 running backs that are going to catch the ball more. So is it likely to have 2,000-yard receivers? Probably not. But I think these 2 are going to push each other. I think that's why they're so excited to play together because they know – D-Hop knows now he's got somebody across from him that can do a lot of the things that he does.
Well, it takes some of the pressure, not necessarily the pressure to perform, not that type of pressure, but the pressure you're going to get from the opposing team defense when they are, everybody zeroing in on you, in the passing game. Last year, that's what they did. They zeroed in on D-Hop in the passing game. Why? Because Treylon was in and out of the lineup. Okonkwo didn't figure out how to catch the ball into the second half of the season. You had Josh Wiley, a young, a rookie tight end. You had Chris Moore and Nick Westbrook-Akine, who are good players, but they're not the type of players that I think scares opposing defenses. Now, you better pay attention to them because they can go out and get the job done. But they didn't put fear, like they were not game changers in a sense. The one guy that could be that was D-Hop. So now you add a Calvin Ridley. Now it takes the pressure off of you from the defense. Now they got to sort of gravitate to a Calvin Ridley. So to me, it's going, and I said this to you off air, and it's going to mean less targets for D-Hop, but it may not necessarily mean a drop in production. Just because you have less targets don't mean you drop in production. This helps out D-Hop, and this is what I've been saying for the last year and a half when he first got here. I said that in order for D-Hop to have that season that he had in Houston, those seasons that we had in Houston, Treylon Burks has to be the guy. I wasn't saying that I thought Treylon Burks was better than D-Hop. It wasn't that.
Mm-hmm.
Treylon Burks was a younger, bigger, faster a receiver. So if we can get you going, now, again, it takes the pressure off of D-Hop from a defensive standpoint. Now they got to pay attention to Treylon as opposed to paying attention to D-Hop. Now, if you're going to put your best corner one-on-one on D-Hop or your second best corner one-on-one with D-Hop, I'm taking D-Hop all day, every day. So had Burks come on, D-Hop, we would have seen a slightly better version of him. I think we would have.
I agree.
Not that he wasn't good this year, because he was.
Sure.
But when you have that other guy as your agent as a receiver, and you have that young guy on the side of you that can take some of the pressure or take some of the coverage off of you, now you're able to work a lot better. You're able to work a lot cleaner. There's not a lot of, double teaming or in a sense, or the coverage sort of roll into my side. Now I'm seeing off coverage. Now I'm seeing single coverage. Why? Because this young guy on the other side, Treylon Burks, is now playing the way that we thought he would play.
Right.
Had they gotten that last year, I think his production.
Ridley's not here.
Yeah, Ridley's not. Ridley is not here. Yeah, he's not here if you're getting in production, and the production from D-Hop goes up even more.
Yeah,
that's why I think this year, now that you got a Calvin Ridley, that is what's going to happen, at least in my mind. Again, I only say this because I've been through it. When they brought Anquan Bolden in, my production was better. I didn't get targeted as much, but the production was better each and every game. But the production at the end of the year was better. We split sort of.
You and Bolden?
Me and Bo. We split sort of the yardage and the catches and the touchdowns. I think both of us that year had 7 or more touchdowns.
You both had 7.
We had to it was a good balance. Teams couldn't just roll to my side or roll to his side. They had to play it honest.
So here's what's interesting, and I'm glad you brought, because that's where I was going to go with this, because you went through this in 2010 in Baltimore. And they brought in Anquan Bolden, and you're right. Your targets did go down. You had 134 in 2009. You had a clean 100 in 2010, 61 catches. But what's interesting, if you look at Anquan's numbers that same year, he only had 9 more targets than you.
Mm-hmm. It was balanced out.
And 3 more catches. And
it was balanced out.
You both were around 800-something yards that year and 7 touchdowns. So why can't the Titans do that with, you probably would like to get a little more yardage-wise out of Ridley, especially just because he's a younger receiver. But if that turns out to be the balance between those two, and then Treylon comes in there with 500 or 600, and you got the backs and stuff, you're obviously throwing the ball more. I mean, we're going to be talking about Will Levis throwing for 4,000 yards this year.
Yeah, and that's all you want is balance. Now, obviously, we assume, and just because we assume doesn't mean it's going to happen. We assume that Calvin Ridley would be the number 1 receiver, and then obviously,
do we make
D-Hop,
too big of a deal of that, though, of who's 1, who's 2?
I mean, no, I guess we can at times.
Yeah.
But I just think it depends on matchups and games. if, say, first game of the season, Ridley goes off, now teams are going to be shifting to his side. Now, what are you going to do, Brian Callahan, to combat that? Are you going to motion him down, put him in a slot? Are you going to move him around? Or are you going to say, okay, we're still going to continue to do what we've been doing with you, Ridley, but this game, it's going to be more about D-Hop. Why? Because it's getting single coverage now. So it may sort of kind of switch from game to game. And that's how it did with Anquan and I. There was some games Anquan got more targets, and then there was some games that I got more targets. But it was balanced. It just depends on the defense and the matchups. Some teams didn't want Anquan going off, and so they geared their coverage more toward him. Sometimes they didn't want me to get off, so they geared their coverage more toward me, or they picked and choose their downs, who they were gonna double team and who they were not. So I think that's what you want to get to a point with this receiving core now that they've added Calvin Ridley. One, everyone build a rapport with the quarterback.
Sure.
And then two, make it so defenses has to pick your poison. Which one do you want? Do you want D-Hop going off on you? Or do you want Calvin Ridley going off on you?
Because you can't double team him.
Because you can't double. Or if Traylon comes on, which I pray that he does, or do you want Traylon going off? Which one do you want? That's what you want to get to a point to. That's why, Cincinnati had so much success, not last season, but the year prior to that before Burrow got hurt. Because it was like, pick your poison.
Yeah.
You have, obviously, Jamar Chase. You're going to try to concentrate on him every game. But then you got T. Higgins. But then you got Tyler Boyd. So pick which one of these guys you want to, not pay attention to. Because whichever one of these guys you don't pay attention to, I'm just going to hit them up and down the field.
And they can all three can move around, right?
Exactly.
Like they can be outside, they can be inside. Mm-hmm. Like this, I heard your rant on like slot receiver. I mean, the days of a true slot receiver
they're gone
kind
for
of
the most part. Yeah.
I mean, you have to be versatile. You have to be able to play, both inside and out in these offenses, and I think all three of them can. What do you think about this text? 4101 says, D-Hop and Ridley have the potential to be like Jerry Rice and Tim Brown were in the early 2000s for the Raiders. I don't know if I'm gonna go that far.
Yeah, I mean, yes, you got a Hall of Famer in D-Hop. You got that already. But Calvin has to prove himself, even though I think Calvin is a hell of a receiver.
Yeah.
2 years ago, I was wondering why the Titans didn't go get him, and they allowed the Jacksonville Jaguars to make a trade, and they gave up basically nothing to get him.
Yeah.
Now, had they re-signed him, they would have had to give up some draft picks, but they didn't re-sign him, so I don't think they have to give up much, if any. But why didn't the Titans make that move back then? What was it? Not last season, but
it was 2 years ago.
2 years ago. Well, they had AJ. I can understand that. But still, with AJ, you still needed you a second receiver because you knew you wasn't going to sign Davis. You knew you weren't going to sign Corey Davis back.
Yeah.
So why not bring him in? He had to sit the whole year anyway, and then allow him to play, i.e. what Jacksonville did.
Yeah. No, I agree. But, I mean, they got him now. Speaking of 4480, you're going to love this.
Uh-huh.
With the news about Corey Davis, what do y'all think about a trade of Traylon Burks for Corey Davis?
Nah, leave that alone.
He's a free agent, by the way.
He's a free agent. You don't have to touch him. I think the Jets.
Yeah, I think they
took him off the.
They took him off the
retired something list.
Yeah, but then they had to give permission for him to seek a trade. I don't know if he is a free agent unless they released him.
I remember reading it on Twitter.
They
from
still
Schefter
had
and Rappaport.
He may be a free agent. They may have let him go because I can't see anyone after a guy struggled and then end up retiring for a year. I can't see anybody giving up anything to try to get him. They're like, listen, we know you're gonna let him go, so we'll take him off. We'll take him off the free agent, heap once he gets there. But no, and it's not like I'm saying no because I don't like Corey Davis. I thought they should have kept Corey Davis when they allowed him to sign a contract with the Jets.
No, he's now been released.
Yeah, I wish they would have signed him back. Why? Because he was a good number 2 for this team.
He's been released from the reserve retired list. Mm-hmm. I don't think that necessarily means he's been released, from what I'm reading.
Okay,
that's a little confusing. But I don't know. I would not bring him.
No. Yeah, it's his time here is ran its course. He's done.
So what else do they need to do before the draft? We will discuss that coming up next. And I got a thought, and maybe it's a hot take for D-Mase on a certain position. You feel free to weigh in, 615-737-1025, our phone and text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. It's Caroline, Willy, and D-Mase. Chase in for Caroline and Willy right now here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Caroline, Willy, and D-Mase, presented by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. You must be 21 years or older and in Tennessee to bet. Chase McCabe hanging out with D-Mase right now. Willy will rejoin in just a few minutes. And so what else do the Titans need to do in free agency before the draft? Obviously, they have started the process of addressing the offensive line. They got the center, so you feel good there. They got a backup, depth piece on the offensive line. Still need tackle, which I think is going to be addressed in the draft. Corner, they did sign a corner in Awuzie. Definitely need some help there. Defensive line, I'm very concerned because they basically have Jeffrey Simmons and me right now, which is not good by any means. So that is becoming, I think, a potential draft priority if they can't get anybody in here. And there's just not a lot of options left. Inside linebacker, they got to do that too. I still think there's some good options there that they might be able to sign. Offense, though, from a free agent standpoint, I don't feel like there's really much left that they're going to do on offense. I think everything else on offense is going to come in the draft. That's my opinion.
There is a possibility that can happen because if you look at
I don't think they need to sign another receiver. I'd like to see them draft a receiver.
Free agency, unless you're signing, that individual that really mounts out to be a special teams guy or
which they do
just a body. They
need a return guy.
They can do that. But I think they do address the skill position via the draft. Now, where they address it, is yet to be seen. We obviously feel that, right now as they sit, they still have to get a left tackle. You got your center, you got your left guard, who's going to be your left tackle. So we assume they're going to draft the left tackle in this year's NFL draft, whether it's Art or Fashanu, one of these guys. I know the big kid from Georgia is climbing up the boards. But they're going to have to address that position, I believe, in the first round. After that, their second-round pick, I guess it depends, Chase. I think it depends on who's there. You spoke on it. What if, a team like Minnesota wants to move up in the draft to get one of these quarterbacks? They say they believe in J.J. McCarthy or Bo Nix, one of these guys, or Michael Penix, and they think this guy could be their future. Will they make the move to move up and get that quarterback at the 7th pick? Well, if you're the Titans and the Chargers have already drafted their guy, can you afford to move down knowing who's right behind you? And are they going to get a left tackle or not? If you feel they're not going to get a left tackle, but then you got to also worry about, okay, if we do move down to 11, what if another team moves up in front of us and take one of the tackles that we want?
Right.
So take the top tackle on our board. What if it's Joe or Fashion, one of them, and they end up taking that guy? Then what do you do as a Tennessee Titan organization? So that's what you're going to have to gauge, not necessarily who wants to move up to the 7th pick. Maybe they think maybe the Vikings think, oh, we want J.J. McCarthy, so we're going to move up to that 7th pick and we're going to draft him.
Yeah, which I say, good luck.
Good luck. Take him. Hey, it is what it is. But then you move to 11. Now you got to hope somebody else don't try to move up and get the guy that you're looking. But you get your tackle. If you do move down, try to pick up a 3rd-round pick. If that, you mentioned the defensive back from Alabama,
Kool-Aid McKinstry.
Yeah, McKinstry. If he's there, there's a possibility you could take him.
I like him.
Or if the receiver's there that you love, Leggett, if he's there,
love him.
Would the Titans be looking to add another weapon for their young quarterback, or will they be looking to bolster their defense? Because they still have weaknesses on their defense. The secondary, the linebacker position, those are weak parts of their defense. If you can score 25 points a game, but you're going to end up giving up 27, 28 points a game. So you're going to have to truly solidify that defensive side of the ball. And those two positions in particular, the inside linebacker position and the cornerback position.
Yep. Now I'm gonna throw a name at you. This is something that I kind of wondered if it was possible going into free agency, and I think it's going to be. So I agree that, even if they do this, they still need to draft a corner at some point. They still got to work on that. But I have a feeling that we're going to see a situation like that happened a few years ago. I wouldn't be surprised if Christian Fulton's back on this team on like a 1-year deal because he's still unsigned, and it's pretty clear that, maybe the number he had out there was not the number that the 32 teams in the NFL had for him. Mm-hmm. Remember, they did this with Jayon Brown. Jayon Brown hits free agency. You think he's gone. He goes out there. There's not a market for him. He ends up coming back for a 1-year deal before he finally leaves. I wouldn't be shocked if that happened with Fulton. Now, is Fulton the answer at corner? Absolutely not. But you need more than one. I think he could still fit into the room, and you still go and you address it in the draft too.
You know what?
But he's serviceable.
I think he would. The problem with Fulton is this, and listen, it's no mystery. He gets injured. That's his problem, his hamstring. And I don't know what you can do for a hamstring, because it seems like he's done just about everything he could possibly do. Worked out different. I'm sure he got different treatment, all this other stuff. He's done everything possible to try to keep himself on the field. And once again, he ended up missing time this past season. Why? Because of injury. Now, it seems like the young man has talent. It's there. But if you can't stay on the field, then we can't have a place for you on our team. Now, maybe, just maybe, Denard Wilson and his defense allows him to play a little bit different. I don't think he matched well with what they were trying to do last year.
I don't either.
I think he's more of an in-your-face corner, gets physical with you corner. And if you watch Baltimore, they played some of that, getting physical with individuals, forcing, refs to make calls. Hey, listen, you can't call us every day on holding. So we're going to get physical with you and make it a dirty game, in a sense, on the outside, make it a rough game in a phone booth. If he can play that way in this defense more times than not, then I think you'll get a different version of Christian Fulton.
Right, and that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Especially if you have more depth at corner, and that maybe you're not asking him to be that every down corner. He's not a shutdown corner.
No, he's not. But there's not many shutdown corners in this league either. And it's it's because of the way the league has moved forward, in regards to the offenses. They don't allow you to hold and grab as much as you used to.
Yeah.
These offenses are multiple. They run a lot of stack. They run a lot of bunch. They do a lot of motion. Why? To get that defensive player off of the wide receiver, to try to get a matchup problem. So to me, there's not many shutdown corners. I just need you to go out there and not mess up. I need you to stay in phase, at all times, or damn near every time I need you to be in phase. I don't need you to get beat, or I don't need you to blow a coverage like we seen some last season. I need you to be in phase. I need you to if there's an opportunity to intercept the ball or knock a ball down, that's what you need to do. You don't need to give up gimmies.
Right.
No gimmies. That's what the model should be. With the Tennessee Titans secondary. No gimmies. We're not giving you gimmies anymore. We're not giving you the, 5-yarders, turn around, catch the ball, and try to get 5 more. No, we're not giving you that. We're going to make it very difficult for you to catch the football. And I think this defense will be that aggressive because to me, they got the guys up front to be aggressive.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, too, they got to not just corner. They got to address safety. I mean, I really want to see Justin Simmons. I don't know if the price is just too high for him right now or what. I mean, the safety market was pretty deep. That they could, bring him in here. Mm-hmm. But I am curious of that, if they're able to address safety before the draft and even an edge rusher, Chase Young scheduled to come in for a visit. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't throw a lot at him, I don't love him,
Mm-hmm.
but if it's a team-friendly deal, like a 1-year prove-it kind of deal like they did with Clowney, I wouldn't be opposed to it.
Well, I would love for them to have Chase Young for this reason. Unlike Clowney had already gotten a big contract.
Yeah.
He just wanted some more money. And Clowney is a hell of a player, just a hell of an athlete. It doesn't always match up.
Right.
He's not a
I don't think he lived up to what he
he's not a sack person. Now,
Sure.
he is a person that can collapse the pocket. He is a person that sets the edge, but he doesn't get a lot of sacks in a season. I think you need to, like a Chase Young, you bring him in, you're going to get a motivated Chase Young. Why? Because he hadn't gotten that big contract.
Yeah, he's going to prove it.
It's a prove-it year for him. If he doesn't make it work with this team or any other team, because they're going to sign him to a 1-year deal.
Right.
Any team's going to sign him to or it's going to be a 2-year deal, but really a 1-year deal, and we can get out of it the second year.
I honestly, like Derek, I'd be fine a straight-up 1-year deal, really, really cheap. You go prove yourself. And then if he comes in here and balls out, you let somebody else pay him. Like, no, you don't even have to. Like, you.
But
let him go.
But then you put yourself in the mix to re-signing him.
Sure.
He's more likely to take a little bit less because he's been with you and he's had some success with you as a defensive coordinator.
Right.
So to me, going out, having Chase Young come in, doing an interview with him, getting a feel for him. I think, to me, it would be, if you can, a deal that was, good for the Titans. I think it would be a good move to bring Chase Young on.
Yeah.
Because he's going to be motivated to play. And put him next to Jeffrey Simmons, on the other side of Harold Landry. I mean, you got a nice defensive line.
All right now.
You got a nice defensive line because you got one of those guys that is hungry and ready to prove that he deserves a big contract.
Titans are scheduled, according to reports, to visit with Andres Pete, Marcus May, and the aforementioned Chase Young. So definitely not done yet, even though that initial first wave of free agency has been complete. We'll bring Willie D back into the fold and continue the discussion coming up next here on Caroline, Willie, and D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Happy Monday out there, people. Hey, listen, March Madness it hadn't officially begun, but it's right around the corner. So I know you're going to be betting all day, every day for the next week or so. And if you're going to do it, you need to do it with our partners in sports. And I need to tell you about their new introductory promotion, okay? As I have been telling you for the last month and a half, 2 months. Available to all new customers in Tennessee is the No Danger First Wager. When you sign up for a Zen Sports account, you will receive up to $1,000. No Danger First Wager. When you place your first bet on Zen Sports, you will be reimbursed for the amount of your bet if it loses up to $1,000, people. Plus, Zen Sports has launched their VIP program for the premier bettors of Tennessee. If you think you might qualify, then listen up. The VIP program is by invite only. So, if you feel that your Zen Sports play qualifies for a VIP consideration, please check out the program details and apply at zensports.com/VIP. No other sports book, and I mean no other, will offer you a premier sports betting experience with 24/7 top-tier customer support and bigger and better action than Zen Sports, people. So what are you waiting for? Get going and download their app at zensports.com today. Zen Sports, where betting just got better. Remember this, gambling problems, call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 years or older to bet here in Tennessee.
Well, I guess once again it is Chase, Willy, and D-Mase.
Like got a ring to it.
Like old times.
Little throwback.
Caroline on vacation, so I'm hanging out. Willy's back with us. D-Mase and I have been talking some football. We're broadcasting from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round. We've been talking free agency and what the Titans need to do next, and I don't think they're done. I think that initial first wave is done, the big money, the overpays and things like that. I mean, I think we can agree that they did pretty well in that department. They probably overpaid a little bit for Calvin Ridley, but that's the price of doing business. Now it's the filling out your team and getting some depth.
You guys know I've taken a position of, historically, in my view, in my study of this is not the way to build a winning team long term. I understand where the position is, and they got a huge windfall. And to their credit, they paid the credit card bill last year.
Yep.
They paid it.
Yep.
So they're free to start spending. We had a great interview with Ozzie Newsome. Outstanding interview.
That was good.
And when Derek asked, is the cap real? His first answer was, it's a credit card.
Yes.
And you can put stuff on the credit card.
Uh-huh.
But eventually, you've got to pay the bill. Floyd Reese, I think, would have said the same exact thing. Mm-hmm. And when Floyd had to cut Derek,
when Floyd cut Derek, that was paying the bill.
That was paying. That's because it was he couldn't put it off any longer. He had to pay the bill, and it stunk. But that's the point. And I think they should be given some credit. I think John Robinson before ran Carthon, but I think they did a good job of knowing that last year was the way to go. They could still maybe find a window to win, which is what they hoped would happen. That would have been the ideal scenario while paying the credit card bill, is still win. But last year they didn't win, but the one thing they did was set up this situation where they did have more money to spend. And that being said, I still am a little worried that when you just go buy all these players, it shows you how many holes that you have to fill, and they still have a lot of holes. So I'm not saying this is not a good move. I'm just saying you got to be careful that you don't get the credit card bill built up earlier than you want to before you've got a chance to win. Like, the way to build your team, as Ozzie said, is through the draft.
Yeah.
And that's
through the draft.
But I mean,
not going out and buying this free agent, that free agent, because it sounds great. But you don't. What was another Ozzie line? We don't play until September.
Yeah. Right. That's true.
There's no games until September.
But I mean, they didn't have a choice that they were going to have to fill some of those holes with free agency.
Sure.
Now it's some key positions I think can be addressed in the draft. Like, if they end up drafting Joe Alt, they have their left tackle for the next 10 years. Yes. I believe. And Fashanu probably the same way. You hope. But I feel pretty good about both of those guys.
But see, what starts happening is if you do get those guys, and you better get those guys start needing to get signed to the next contract. And if you got a bunch of dead money, bloated contracts on veterans that aren't worth what you paid, and the dead money starts, it gets harder to find room to sign your nucleus, which should be players you draft that you sign to the next contract. That's what concerns me about a lot of free agent veteran money spent up front.
But let me ask you this. If in that 4-year time span when you get to the point where you got to pay the credit card bill, if you're attending a parade downtown, are you really going to care?
But this team's nowhere close to a parade.
Well, okay, within a 4-year period they might could be.
Well, that's what
right now, no. But I mean, like, the Rams did that. They won a Super Bowl, and they've had to pay the credit card. Now, they've come back a little quicker than I think people thought. But
no question, nobody's worried about the credit card bill.
If
you
win
now, yes.
If you win,
right. If you win, it's like, okay, whatever.
But I guess my thought would be, if you're going to win, you're going to win because you draft well, and Will Levis becomes a really good player.
Yeah.
Not because the free agents should end up being the icing on your cake and not the cake. I'm worried that we're building a cake here with the free agents, and the cake is a little bit, it's top heavy. If there's too much icing on there, you know what I'm saying? The cake needs to be the Will Levis and Skoronski and whoever you draft at number 7 and Traylon Burks and Okonkwo. That needs to be your cake.
No, 100%. And I think they're going to have an opportunity to build through the draft and to bring in some key players. Where hopefully they get the tackle in the first round. Now, I'd love to see a receiver in the second round or a corner. Like if Kool-Aid's sitting there, then okay, there's your corner hopefully for the next few years, and then you get a receiver later on. In a perfect world, they're maybe moving a few spots back in the first round, and they figure out how to get a third rounder because they don't have a third rounder. I think there's a ton of talent that's going to go in the third round on night 2, and so and then the fourth round and so on. Like it's a deep draft in certain spots that I think they can fill some of these holes. But again, they're going to enter the season still weak at certain spots. And that's just, what Titans fans have to expect.
And I do see the thinking of because most of this money that they've spent is on the offensive side. So they're trying to support their young quarterback and give him a chance to be successful. And that's sound thinking, right? Because wouldn't you say that the majority just take the money to Ridley alone, but a Ridley, Pollard, they've spent a little bit more on the offensive side.
Yeah, and they needed to. I mean, they certainly needed to. But, as Derek and I were talking about.
Just keeping DeAndre Hopkins, too, is another thing that shouldn't be taken for granted. Like, in a certain situation, if you're totally rebuilding, you might shop him around a little bit or at least see what you could get. So I'm trying to get that third-round pick back.
I'm not shopping Traylon. I'm not shopping D-Hop.
I agree with that.
I'm rolling with it.
And the idea is because you want Levis to have everything that he could be equipped with possibly to take the next step.
Well, you want him to have as many weapons as he possibly can. And why would you move off from, Traylon Burks? Now, if somebody, wants to offer you something for him and you believe that, it's worth doing, then that's something you got to look into. But I don't think they've added enough to part ways with the Traylon Burks like right now. They added Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. I mean, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine is a good player, but, I mean, we know what he can do. We know sort of the limitations in a sense, but they need to make sure they have enough pass catchers, not just pass catchers, but guys that can be impact players for your young quarterback. And I can't see them doing, getting rid of Traylon Burks right now when they don't have that guy to fill his space. Unless fans want Nick Westbrook-Ikhine to be third receiver now. Okay, if that's the case and the Titans want him to, then fine. It's their organization. But I think they want someone that can be explosive, at that third spot. And right now, you just feel Traylon, if he stays on the field, which is a big if he stays on the field all 17 games, which I predict he will, then that's where you're going to get that explosiveness that you need from that third receiver.
No doubt. We'll talk more about this with Teron Davenport, ESPN. He's going to join us next here on Caroline, Willy, and D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Caroline, Willy, and D-Mase chase in for Caroline today here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game, alongside Derek Mason and Willy Donick, Dr. Crane, Nick Frazier, on the ones and twos. And every Monday at this time, they talk to Teron Davenport from ESPN. TD, what's up?
What's going on?
Good to chat with you and talk a little Titans football. I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked D-Mase, and you and I were texting about this a little bit yesterday, but I am very, very excited about Calvin Ridley joining this team because that's a guy that has something to prove, has a chip on his shoulder, and I think the guy that's going to be playing across from him feels the same way in DeAndre Hopkins. Do you feel like those two are going to push each other and therefore we're going to see a pretty explosive offense with just those two receivers, not to mention everything else that they're going to have at their disposal?
Yeah, they'll definitely push each other. I thought it was pretty cool that Ridley said that he worked with or trained with Hopkins in the past, and he mentioned having a great receiver opposite him to push him. So he said himself that that's going to happen. And, you know, Hopkins, he's one of those self-inspired guys where no matter what, he's going to look to do the best because he's just self-motivated. And that's one of the things I really like about him. So it's going to be interesting seeing all that together.
Now, TD, do you see them making any moves before draft in regards to free agency? I know after the draft there could be some moves made, late into June, because there will be players released after the draft. But before then, do you see the Titans making any more moves via free agency? And is there any other guy out there there's even, that you would even want to make a move on?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's possibilities. You look at Chase Young, that visit is still set to happen whenever that does. And you bring a guy like that in on a 1-year, prove-it type of deal, and you have the money next year to sign him long-term if he shows that he's worthy of that. He's only 24, so that's a move I would definitely look at. And he's a guy that would help make up for the loss of Danico Autry. You can move him inside, outside, use him in a very similar way, to be honest with you. So you do have that. I don't know that they make any other moves. There's Isaiah Simmons, possibly the linebacker. I believe he was last on the Giants. I don't know if they make any moves on the inside backer thing. I was really surprised that Jerome Baker left. Of course, you got Andrews Pete, who is here today, the offensive lineman from the Saints. So I think the Chase Young one would probably be the most likable, most likely one. But other than that, I'm not sure.
Now, they haven't really addressed the secondary. I know they brought, they made some signings, but, guys that we think can be long-term fixes at that position, they didn't sign. Obviously, the kid out of Cincinnati, they believe, coming here, if they can get 3 years out of him, considering his age, I think it would be a plus, but they need someone opposite of him. Chase did bring up possibly Christian Fulton, bringing him back. I wouldn't be opposed to that because I think the one thing that really hampered him, and everybody knows it, is the injuries. But if you put him in this type of defense, assuming that they play sort of the same way Baltimore played a year ago, an aggressive style defense, that may fit him a little bit better than what they were playing last year.
Yeah, it would definitely fit him better than what they were playing. He's at his best in man coverage. He has, just in conversations, he has said that, but he's willing to do whatever, but he admits it. He's a man corner. That's what he does. So you do have that. I don't know that he wants to come back, to be honest with you. I think he's at a point where change of scenery is the move for him. And, I mean, I get it. There was a lot that, went on here. And obviously a lot of the issues that he had are with somebody who's not here any longer. But still, I think, change of scenery is what he wants.
Teron, I want to ask you about another thing we were kicking around, and that is just the shaping of a team through free agency here in the situation that the Titans are in. I've seen some really interesting – some people have reached out to me and sort of challenged my thinking. I still think that I'm looking more at how do I get my team 2 years, 3 years from now in a position where I can open up a window where I can really compete. And I'm skeptical that you can do that spending a ton of money on free agency. But this is a point I want to ask you. I do think they deserve a lot of credit for and you use this term a lot, paying the credit card bill last year, right? And not having in a deal where you're losing your quarterback that you've had for years, you're losing Derrick Henry, who you've leaned on for years, Kevin Byard. There's not a lot of dead money out there in the coming years for that. So that's a big thumbs up, and that's one of the reasons they have this kind of budget.
Yeah, I mean, look, you have a bunch of contracts that just weren't good ones, and they're kind of taking the bull by the horns this year and taking a lot of that on, and that's going to allow them to have a lot of money next year. But, you want to be able to sign your younger players, right? You want to bring in, draft younger players that make it to a second contract, and that's something that this team hasn't really been able to do consistently, and that's why you have all that dead money.
So do you think that I guess that was my next question, because I haven't looked at some of these contracts that they're shelling out with a Ridley and stuff. Is this going to someday possibly hamper them in signing presumably good players they're going to have over the next 2 or 3 years, signing them to the next contract? Because that's where you start getting in cap trouble, right? You draft a lot of players. If they're good, you've got to sign to that next contract, and you've got to be able to budget for raises.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to be fine. They're in good shape there because they've managed to get some of those bad contracts off the books to the point now where, I mean, look, they re-signed Harold Landry. That's a pretty solid deal that they were able to do. They re-signed Jeffrey Simmons, and that market has readjusted itself. So you look at the contracts, there aren't really any outrageous contracts on the board anymore. And so I think that will allow them to be able to sign some of these players and consistently build the roster through free agency. But the draft is the way you go. That's how you build the roster, and they have to get better at doing that. And I think last year was a good start.
Give us your insights on the Mason Rudolph contract. Any quarterback always has everybody weighing in on their opinions. We've certainly seen mixed ones coming our way. I think it's a pretty solid signing, but give me your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, it's nowhere near the tragedy that some are making it out to be. Look, you sign him to be your backup quarterback. You're not signing him to be in contention for the starting spot. You're signing him to be a backup, and for that role, Mason Rudolph is a pretty solid option. And I think context, like everything, it really applies here. You have to understand what his purpose is with this Titans team. And the thing that's interesting that I'm curious about is, okay, he's already been in this situation for both sides of it, to where he was that understudy for Ben Roethlisberger, and then he was that veteran that a younger rookie quarterback was supposed to be able to look at. So I think having both sides of the fence in his catalog, I think would be good. And it, to me, is a solid signing, and especially when you're considering at how much money it is.
We're talking to Teron Davenport from ESPN, and as I kind of go through, my thoughts on the draft and where they're at, obviously still could bring in a couple of other guys, but now defensive line is a worry for me to give Jeffrey Simmons some help. Are there some guys that stand out to you in the draft that the Titans might be interested in?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, Tavondre Sweat comes to mind immediately, and he's, you're talking about a guy like tons of beef. Remember the old Wendy's commercial? Where's the beef? Well, it's right there. He's like 365, 370 pounds, and he moves well for that size. So you got him. I think you look at some of the other guys like Michael Hall Jr. out of Ohio State. He's another one that no one is really talking about, but he's one of those smaller, sudden D tackles, and I watched him give plenty of offensive linemen the business there at the Senior Bowl. And then you go ahead and you watch the tape against Notre Dame. He and 44, I can't pronounce his name. Those guys together, they gave Notre Dame's line fits, including Joe Alt at times on their switches and stuff. So I think he's another guy. Byron Murphy, who was right there in the lineup at Texas with Tavondre Sweat as well. So those are three off the bat that could draw interest.
Do you see any major moves? Because if you look at the Titans and where they sit at the 7th pick now, Chase and I discussed this. If a team, say Minnesota, thinks, hey, they're sold on J.J. McCarthy and they feel they got to move up to get him. If you're the Titans, one, do you make the trade? And then two, if indeed you make the trade, if you can't get, say, one of those tackles, because that's the problem, that's the issue you would run into. If you do move down to 11th, someone else can then move above you to get the tackle you want in this year's draft. If indeed that does go that way, can you see them drafting not just a receiver, but then again, one of those defensive players, whether it's a corner or one of those inside backers?
Yeah, if they trade back, look, it would all depend on, okay, is Joe Alt on the board? Because if Joe Alt is off the board, then you look into Fashanu, you look at Fuaga, you look at Fautanu, you look at Latham. Oh, some have Latham, and you look at some of these mocks. Latham is ranked ahead of Joe Alt. Now, I wouldn't go that far, but you look at it, that's the case. So if you trade back and Alt is not there, I think you could comfortably go between 10 and 16 or so and still get a good shot at one of the tackles that could help you out. So you do have that. Look, you say the defensive guys, but, don't rule out Brock Bowers. You look at him and what he does. He's a playmaker. He's an impact player. So he's another one in a trade-back type scenario could be there. So there's a lot of ways that they could go. It's just really going to depend on how this board works. And I've even seen people have, Malik Neighbors ranked above Marvin Harrison Jr. So it's like, okay, is that really a set thing with the Cardinals when they pick? Or do the Cardinals trade out of that and another team comes up to get a quarterback? There's so many directions that the draft could go, and that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, I understand. I think that 3 through 5, if it doesn't go the way, which I do sort of predict that it will not go the way that many think it will. But if it doesn't, and it throws the draft off, and say one of those wide receivers are, continue to fall down the board, then you're the Titans. What do you do? Do you take the tackle? Say if Alt's not there and Fashanu is, do you take the tackle, or do you take the playmaker, in one of those receivers, whether it's Neighbors, or Adunze, or even Marvin Harrison Jr., because there are some people that got, Neighbors higher on their draft board than Marvin Harrison is.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing I'm saying, how it's so unpredictable. And it comes down to how they weigh it out, right? Mm-hmm. How do they feel their left tackle situation could be addressed? And if Alt's on the board and Harrison Jr. is on the board, that's a really, really tough decision. Whereas you're weighing, okay, I know if I get this guy, for the most part, we're going to get solid to outstanding play for the next 10 years. But then do you want to be that guy that took Joe Alt over Marvin Harrison Jr., who becomes a perennial All-Pro and leading the league in receiving? Like, that doubt, that's enough to make you like, I might have to go for the bigger risk that has a bigger return.
Now, how would you grade this portion of free agency for the Tennessee Titans, and how do you stack them up with everyone else in the AFC South? And I understand, Houston has been making a lot of moves, and they feel they can because they got their franchise quarterback on a rookie deal, so they can try to build this team a little bit different from teams that are a little bit closer to paying their franchise quarterback or already have paid their franchise quarterback.
Yeah, Houston is a bit of an anomaly in that what you said. They recognize that they got their franchise guy, and they're building around him. It's like the old Seahawks teams with Russell Wilson and even the 49ers with Kaepernick. So you have them. I think the grade is incomplete. I feel like they waited a bit on some of the options on the defensive line. Maybe they feel, they have guys maybe in Quentin Bohannon, that could come in and be a solid player over the stretch as opposed to just that short bit of time. Kyle Pecco is another guy. He's going to be he's a free agent, but when he was healthy, he played well. So I don't know. I think they waited there. I thought DJ Reader was the move to make, and I don't know what happened with it, but it didn't happen. So you have that. I really have to say incomplete. You look at Jerome Baker. That's another one. Okay, what happened there? He was the ultimate compliment to Kenneth Murray. What are you going to do in that situation? And then the secondary, I thought Fuller was a guy that they could get, and he ended up signing, I forget where he went, but it was a cheap deal. He did it on Friday. And then even the trade for Morgan Moses, right? You talk about acquiring a tackle. I mean, Morgan Moses is a guy that continues to just, not be on the Titans' radar, but yet he gives you outstanding play at right tackle, So that's another one. So I really have to say incomplete. If I did have to give a letter grade, I would say, like B- in that area because there's still holes. The problem is what they have to do, it can't really be done in one off season, right? Like you can't flip a roster like that into a Super Bowl contender in one off season. I don't care how much money you spend and how many picks you make.
Teron Davenport, presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. TD, why don't you tell us a little bit more about ESPN Bet?
Yeah, ESPN Bet is actually now live in Tennessee, so go check that out. It's the official sports book of ESPN, the only place you can find daily exclusives and offers with your favorite ESPN personalities and shows. All you got to do, you sign up today, and as a new user, you get $100 in bonus bets, and that's for making any sportsbook bet. You get all your favorite markets and bets like in-game wagering, cross-sport parlays, teasers, and every single prop you could handle. That's ESPN Bet. Download today. You must be 21 or older and in Tennessee. For problem gambling support, you call or text the TN Red Line at 800-889-9789. Do be aware that terms and conditions apply. Check the app for details.
TD, you are my favorite ESPN personality, so we appreciate it as always. And we'll see you Friday when you're going to hang out with me.
That's right. Chase and TD show over there. If folks
talking Mets Braves.
That's right.
There might be some Mets Braves mixed in there, no doubt, with baseball.
I'm all right with that.
Yes, sir. All right, we'll see you Friday. Thanks, TD.
All right. See you guys.
Yep. Teron Davenport, ESPN Titans NFL Nation reporter. Yes, TD and I are going to sit in for Jared on Friday, so looking forward to doing that and working on some things for that show on Friday. Yes, my Braves bringing back Adam Duvall for the 16th time. So looking forward to that, having him back in the fold. But, Willie, it's almost time.
It is almost time. I'm not really excited about the Mets right now. I'm keeping my expectations
You're not ready to meet the
low.
Mets?
Oh, I'm always ready to meet the Mets, but I'm keeping my expectations low. We've got some problems. We overpaid the credit cards.
When does that never not
We're
happen?
helping fund all of the great franchises out there in the smaller markets.
How's
the
Max
Oakland
Scherzer
A's.
working out?
Well, we have Acuna's brother because of him. And so that was probably the right move, honestly, because Scherzer and Verlander at some point are going to get too old to get people out and last for the whole season. So I didn't have a problem with those moves, really, but they're in the meantime, they spent too much money on guys that either are hurt or aren't playing for them anymore.
Yep.
So they have got. That is an interesting question.
They got to pay the credit card.
It's the luxury tax. They are paying huge luxury tax money, which goes back into the pool for everybody else, mostly the smaller market teams. So it shows you that you can't just spend your way to a championship. You got to build through the draft and develop players.
You cannot.
Trust the future, Willie. Ronnie Mauricio. Just trust the future.
Well, he was ready, and then he tore his ACL. He's out. So that's typical Mets. And Kodai Senga, out. Sore shoulder.
Well,
hopefully not for too long. But
I would say that
we got issues.
I got issues.
I got a bunch of issues, Willie.
Yeah. And now, D-Mase, your Tigers. It's a winnable
are
division.
They his Tigers?
It's a winnable division.
I take them.
Now, what you need to be doing? Have you adopted the Orioles still? Because now they're the real deal.
I mean,
they're the real deal.
Yeah, any team.
Now that's how you build a team through the draft. Now they went through some ridiculous bad times, but they are loaded now. They've got the young talent. That's an exciting team, and the Tigers should be there.
They're my de facto
They're not
team.
quite there. Yeah.
Baltimore is the Orioles.
Okay.
I take them.
Okay. You've got two.
Everybody heard that, right? The Orioles. So, I don't want people to say, "Oh, you're just not jumping on the bandwagon." Nah. Ever since Adam Jones gave me the bat,
okay,
then I've been an Oriole fan.
Yeah.
So
Well,
there we go.
There you go.
Absolutely.
He's an Oriole fan.
can't wait for some baseball. Speaking of that, Tim Corbin's Doors heard on our airwaves.
Yep.
Smoked Auburn 3 straight. Auburn was ranked top 20.
That was a good way to start the SEC play.
Good SEC start. So they're starting to get it together.
So
they had some early stumbles.
Is that 13 straight that they've won now?
Is that right, Nick?
That is correct.
Yeah.
13.
They're on a roll.
Good way to start the season. So, and glad to have Doors baseball on. Obviously, the men's basketball team looking for a coach, and the women's team going dancing as they'll play Wednesday night in the first 4. I still call it the play-in game against Columbia. So things are good right now. The Lady Raiders are in the tournament as well. They'll play Louisville on Friday. So, our local team's well represented.
Exactly.
I'd like to see a few more in the
Would like
coming
to see a
years.
few more.
Yeah, but congrats to those teams for sure, because it gets harder and harder every year to make it. There's the number of Division I teams is not shrinking; it's growing.
Yeah, no. Speaking of Vanderbilt and their coaching search, we'll talk to our buddy Mitch Light from The Athletic coming up next and kind of get his thoughts on that job and who might be available for that job, plus the brackets being out as well. It's Caroline, Willy, and D-Mase, or maybe today it's Chase, Willy, and D-Mase like old times as Caroline's on vacation. 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Caroline, Willy, and D-Mase. Chase in for Caroline today, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Here on this Monday, Chase McCabe, Willy Donick, Derek Mason with you. Let's say hello to Mitch Light from The Athletic. Mitch, it's been a while. How are you?
You stole my words, Chase. I was going to say, Chase, it's been a while. I'm doing well. Hope you guys are doing great.
Doing fantastic. So let's start, before we get into the tournament, with Vanderbilt. They mutually agree to part ways with Jerry Stackhouse, so they now have an opening for the men's basketball coach. And I know I'm not going to be the first person to say this name, and I know that they're probably not going to entertain this name, but I feel like they should call Will Wade. What do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting. I would have said, how do I say this? Like, before the recent the climate change in college athletics with NIL and all that, I would have said 0% chance. I'll say 3% chance now. I mean, I know what you're saying. I just think the baggage, the behavior, I just think it's too much. I mean, the guy won at VCU. He won at LSU. Obviously, he's winning at McNeese State. There's the obvious connections. Grew up in Nashville, season ticket holder and all that. I would not say 0% chance, but I'd be very, very surprised.
Is that just because you mentioned the baggage, and we all know that the baggage is there, but don't you think that the way that the landscape of college sports has changed, that while it might be uncomfortable for Candace Story-Lee and Vanderbilt to go down a road like that they almost have to maybe explore it just because the way things are? Because, look, he's not going to be at McNeese State forever. He's going to get another shot.
Right. I totally see what you're saying. And I like a lot of situations like this, not just Vanderbilt, any school. I like to put myself, if I were the decision maker, would I do this? It's easy for us to sit here on talk radio, or you're talking to your buddies, oh, they should do this. But it's making the decision. If I were the decision maker, I don't think I would do it. Doesn't mean another decision maker won't do it, or different set of circumstances, and we don't know all of the entire situation with what happened. We think, we read stuff. That's why schools hire search firms, really, to figure out all the dirt. And this is like all hypothetical, but like if someone commits a crime that you think is pretty egregious and they change the law a year later, they still committed that crime. He still did things that other schools weren't doing. And you can argue, athletes should have been paid. I get that part of the argument, but he still did some pretty egregious things by all accounts that his competitors weren't doing and gave him a competitive advantage. We don't need to spend the whole time on Will Wade. It's a complex situation. I understand the arguments for, but I would not do it. And I don't think, like I said, I'd be very surprised if Vanderbilt did it.
But Mitch, don't you, like Chase said, whether it's Will Wade or someone else, I think Vandy is in a position where they need a splash hire. They need someone
that
can, sort of galvanize, that program once again. They need someone that can go out there and get those recruits. They only need one or two guys to come in here, and that can change the fortune at least for the first year. But they're going to have to do something to jumpstart this program once again.
Yeah, and one thing I was going to your point too, one thing I was going to say with Chase's point, like one thing about this, and let's preface this by saying whether it's college football, college basketball, you don't know how things are going to turn out. Like we've learned as fans of sports that we think we know like what's a good fit at schools, and so we don't know. But I'm saying that to say that this is there's a very strong pool, in my opinion, of mid-major coaches, not just for Vanderbilt, for all the openings. I think when you go back and look at Vanderbilt's last two rounds of hires, I don't think for whatever reason, I don't think the candidate pool was as good. So to kind of what Chase was saying, like if let's say you just not that you should hire Will Wade because you don't like the other candidates, but it makes it easier not to hire him if there are other strong candidates. If my double negatives work there, but then Derek, what you said, like I just think they need a good coach. I mean, I don't think you make the hire necessary to make a splash. You rejuvenate the program by winning games. So you hire the guy who is going, in your opinion, going to do that. Now, there are certain things now with the climate of college basketball where quick fixes are easier. So if you're Candace Lee and you're going through this process, do you lean more towards someone with more connections and who's recruited the South, or has been active in the portal at their previous stops. Those are things that you really have to consider more now than you did 5, 6, 7 years ago. But again, I think there's a really strong candidate pool out there, and it's just you got to find the right fit for Vanderbilt.
We'll talk with Mitch Light discussing the NCAA tournament, Vanderbilt basketball, so forth and so on. Now, Mitch, looking at the field of 64, and obviously we got the play-in games that will start in the next couple of days here. Which one of the teams outside of Kentucky and UT, because frankly neither one of those teams look good in the SEC tournament, and I'm sure it was they look at it from the standpoint of, listen, the real tournament starts next week for them, which is this week, and they're putting more emphasis toward that. But beside those teams, which team out of the SEC do you give a bigger shot at going far in the tournament?
Well, I think Auburn's an obvious answer, so I'm not going to say them. And also they have a rough draw. I kind of wouldn't be afraid to jump on the Alabama bandwagon. It's dangerous to rely on teams that rely on the outside shot a lot, but it's also if that team gets hot. Like, do you remember when VCU made the Final Four? Like, they were not a good shooting team. They shot great for 4 straight games and made a miraculous run. Alabama is a better shooting team. I'm just using them as an example. So, like, they are clearly, when they're at their best, can beat anyone. Now, their defense is obviously a huge issue. Alabama seems to be one of those high-ceiling, low-floor teams that if they're not shooting well, then they're not playing solid defense. They could get bounced early. But and it kind of goes against the, don't want to jump on the team that had a really great run in the conference tournament, Auburn. So I'd maybe lean a little bit more towards Alabama.
Now, what do you think of A&M? Now, they've had UT's number all season, and those two guards, but it goes to what you're saying. It's like, can you live, in the tournament by shooting outside all the time? But those two guards, Taylor and the other guard, these guys, when they're on, it is very hard to beat them.
Yeah, I mean, Wade Taylor's, I don't think he had the year that a lot of people thought he would, but they had a strange season. Mid-season 4-game losing streak, they lost to Vanderbilt, and then they seemed like they played well in the SEC tournament. A lot of times recently, they throw out a cliche, guards win in the NCAA tournament. Obviously, Buzz Williams always has his teams in the NCAA tournament. So, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all if they did well. Like you said, veteran guards, good coach. Just a little concerned about their inconsistency throughout the season.
Talking to Mitch Light from The Athletic. And Mitch, let's get to and I read Kyle Tucker's piece, which if people are out there, if you want to read a good comprehensive list of some of the guys out there that you probably don't know, he does a good job, I think, of breaking down some of these guys from several programs that are in the tournament. You're going to see them. Maybe one of them will pull a big upset, and you'll know a lot more about them. But of sort of the candidate pool that you referenced there. So who among this group take away the guys that we do know, like Will Wade, who we discussed, or Chris Mack, who a lot of people are looking at, who's out there? Who among that mid-major pool, up-and-comers, intrigues you?
A couple guys. Kyle Smith, whose name's been attached to several jobs. Head coach at Washington State. One thing that I like about him, I like guys who succeed at difficult jobs. Here I looked this up, and he was at Columbia, San Francisco, and Washington State. Columbia has had 2 winning Ivy League seasons since 1993, both under Kyle Smith.
That's a long time.
He had a winning record.
That's 30 years.
Winning record in league play at San Francisco. Washington has had 5 winning Pac-12 seasons since 1993. 2 under Tony Bennett, obviously now at Virginia, and 3 under Kyle Smith. Like, unprecedented to have 3 straight winning Pac-12 seasons. So he's a guy that's clearly has built programs, very well-respected guy. And incidentally, Florida's coach Todd Golden was at San Francisco with Kyle Smith, took over for Kyle Smith when Smith went to Washington State, and then obviously Golden did well there. He's at Florida now. So he's an intriguing guy. Nico Medved is very well-respected. He got going at Furman. Furman plays a really entertaining style of basketball. I'm drawing a blank on his name. The head coach replaced Medved. Medved went to Drake for 1 year, and he's got Colorado State in the NCAA tournament. Josh Schertz Indiana State, obviously, they did not make the tournament. You saw Schertz's name. I know St. Louis is after him, but I don't think that's a done deal by any stretch there. But Google Josh Schertz, and he did. I listened to a podcast with him once with Doug Gottlieb a couple weeks ago, and he's got a really interesting story. The Athletic, we wrote a good story on him, but he went to Lincoln Memorial, Division II school in Eastern Tennessee, and they were horrible when he got there. They got good immediately. He went 214-39 in league play. It's 13 years at Loyal. I wrote my notes LMU. I knew I was going to do that. Memorial University. And then he went to Indiana State, turned that program around. So those are some names. Bucky McMillan, obviously the coach at Samford, former high school coach, has done well. Pat Kelsey. Now, I'm interested in your take on this, Willie. Like, Pat Kelsey is obviously a very good coach. He's got a great record. But he's been at Winthrop and College of Charleston, two teams that are consistently like the better programs in their league. So it's like, I prefer like the Kyle Smith, like guy who's shown he can win at difficult jobs, rather than a guy that was just able to sustain success where others have won at that program. Quite honestly, that was, looking back, maybe that was a knock on Bryce Drew. Valparaiso at the time, now they're in the Missouri Valley. They were in the Horizon League, I forgot, maybe whatever it's called. They were like the best program in that league. He did a great job there, had a great record, but he sustained what previous, his dad and his brother built there. So kind of rambling there, but those some guys, some names that you'll hear a lot about.
It's a deep pool. I agree with you. It is noteworthy that Bryce Drew, since leaving Vanderbilt, has done very well at Grand Canyon. He's back in the tournament again. So that it kind of has you going. Well, you could.
Another situation, and I'm not taking anything away.
I mean, they won't. But I mean, remember that was a Malcolm Turner in his little meteoric rise and fall as the athletic director. He did make that decision to dump Bryce Drew, pull the plug after one awful year, and
worked real well.
And you kind of look at it and say, well, what was the? I mean, he's done well. I got to give him a lot of credit there.
Let me interject, and I don't want to. I mean, Bryce, not taking away from Bryce Drew. There's another example. Grand Canyon is the best job by far in the WAC. They've got like pretty good NIL situation in that league. Look at the teams in that league. There is not there. They have a great home court advantage because they win. He has done a great job there, but it's also clearly the best job in that league. And if you're a coach, I mean, that's what you should do. Look for the best jobs in leagues, and that's why some of those guys have great success.
All right, so let me ask you about Casey Alexander, because you and I have watched him very closely for a long, long time, and I kind of say to myself, when I look at some of these names that you're bringing up that I don't know, but I look at the track record, and from afar, you say, wow, that's impressive. Guy that's done really well at Colgate for a long time. All of these guys that get mentioned. Yeah. But then I say, well, right in your backyard, you've got a guy that has done similar things, and if you're looking from upstate New York, Casey Alexander would be a really attractive guy that you would say, wow, he's won for a long time. Sometimes I feel like we look past the guy that's right on your block and knows a lot about Nashville. I don't know what Vanderbilt's thinking is there, but I know there's always been a debate, even going back to Rick Byrd and even before that, Don Meyer, way, way back, of saying, could you translate success at Belmont or Lipscomb to Vanderbilt? But that's probably the question that any mid-major coach is going to have.
Yeah, and it's fascinating. The knock on Casey is he's never been part of a Power 5 or major conference staff, never had to recruit at that level. But there are a lot of pros. Clearly a really good offensive coach. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Willie. Like I'm not saying it's the system, but the style of basketball kind of reminds me a little bit of Kevin Stallings. Really good offensive team.
Attention to detail, shooters.
Yeah, shooters. Sometimes didn't play great defense. They tried to play great defense. He has done a good job. That's a pretty big leap going from the OVC to the Missouri Valley, and they are, they made that leap pretty successfally. They were one of the better teams in the league. They had a midseason slump this year.
And injuries had something to do with that, for sure.
Yes, very intrigued by that. And I'll say, again, I'm not the decision maker, and if they ask me, I would make the decision for them. But, he's a guy that I think in other cycles would be a stronger candidate. Now, he might be a candidate. And you make an interesting point there, and I was thinking about this yesterday. My daughter Zoe, she was looking at all these schools all over the place. She loves to travel. One day we were driving to school, her senior year of high school, and she said, Dad, I want to go to Vanderbilt. I was like, really? She goes, I don't want to not go just because it's in Nashville. You're supposed to go away to school. And I was thinking, Vanderbilt, if they like Casey Alexander, hire him. Don't not hire him because he's at Belmont and people think you're just doing the easy thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think also you look at your appreciation for Nashville, which Casey Alexander not only has coached at Belmont forever, but he grew up here. He went to Brentwood Academy. Like, I think it would mean something, and he would look at it as a destination. This is just me thinking out loud. I don't know for sure, but I do think you take a long look at that. I think in this day and age of NIL and everything, I do think that brings something to the table.
Yeah, it knows the DNA of the program. Not saying he grew up, I don't know what he grew up fan, might have grew up a UT fan, no idea. But, clearly understands the program. And, like, I talk to friends, we all have the same opinion. Like, if they hire Casey Alexander, he's a good coach. I mean, I really do think he's a really good coach. And I'm trying to think, I know Fran Dunphy coached at, Temple and LaSalle, but Casey would set the record for coaching at 3 schools in the same city, 3 Division I schools in the same city. Maybe you can have 15 really good years here, then go over to TSU for a year or two.
Just knock it all out. Mitch, appreciate it as always. Good to talk to you, and enjoy the tournament.
All right, guys, take care.
Mitch Light from The Athletic joining us here on Caroline, Willy, and D-Mase. We'll come back, put a bow on things next. 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
Hey, let's talk F&M Bank. Oh, yeah. I hit 2 for 2 in my take it to the bank on Friday. Too little, too late in the competition, but hey, I'm going to pat myself on the back anyway. I'll just do it. Oh, thank you, guys. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, F&M Bank, they do a great job. They are right in your backyard. That's one of the things they want you to know. Whether you live in Clarksville, Hendersonville, Springfield, right here in Nashville on West End Avenue, they have got a lot of their locations right in the heart of your community. That's where they want to be, literally and figuratively, because they want to make your banking easier. That's their motto, banking made easy on purpose. Give them a chance to do your banking. They're going to help you. It's going to mean more to them. The decisions are made locally with people who care. It's banking made easy on purpose with F&M Bank. Whether it's the Smart Swipe card and an easy way to save money, whether you're a business owner, it's going to mean more to them. So find the nearest location to you. myfmbank.com. That's myfmbank.com. Find the nearest location and do your business with F&M Bank. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
Chase, not Big Joe, Willy, D-Mase, kind of used to that, in for Caroline today here on this Monday. Appreciate Mitch Light for joining us. Willy, how do you think that's going to turn out? Is it going to be a name we know, or is it going to be an up-and-comer?
I think they're going to do...
Like, is Chris I mean, I feel like Chris Mack is in the mix, too.
You know, I do hear that Chris Mack is interested in the job. I also don't know, is Chris Mack, does he want to come to Vanderbilt, or is Chris Mack just trying to say, I'm ready to get back in the game?
Yeah.
You
have to be
how
wanting
many years
to
has he
come.
been out?
Well, you know, for a while, he was probably one of the more consistent winners in the game. When he was at Xavier, he did a really good job for a long time. Then he went to Louisville, and he was doing really well, and then hit the wall. He had a kind of controversial thing that happened. Then they started losing, so his stock went right down the drain. And so he's been sitting out there. So I don't know. He is definitely a guy that I think you do your homework on, maybe talk to, because he's done it, right? He's won. He's a good coach. But then I would say don't sleep on all these guys that would look at Vanderbilt as this is the job that I want. This is the institution I want to be. But
I think
I'm going to win.
They need to find somebody that wants to challenge the challenge of that job. Because I think it can be a really good job.
I don't think that will be a problem for the ones that they end up interviewing.
Yeah.
They're going to get people that want the job.
It can be a good job.
It can be a good job as long as D-Mase pointed out strongly, and I agree with him, you have to set that coach up with the new era that they're in. The NIL, that's got to be part of it. And these coaches that have won big at the mid-major level, it is a different formula when you get into the SEC where everybody's paying. It has a budget for this kind of thing.
That'll do it for us. Good to sit in with you guys. I'm going to hang out a little bit this week with Caroline out, so we'll have more reunions for sure. That'll do it for us. Back at it tomorrow at 11. Chasing Big Joe at 9. But up next, Stillman and Company here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Be loved and love on your people. Peace.